Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Live. Oh, we have a good show for you today. Morning Joe, excuse me. Morning Joe is just buzzing like a hornet's nest with the passing of this House GOP bill. And suddenly I begin thinking of it in mythological terms. Why does this happen? Why would a political party pass a bill that is obviously going to energize the Democrats and the people that are going to be caught without health care insurance? It just seems to be a little, it just doesn't seem to be very rational. So mythology, we really have to understand we really have to understand American mythology. Mythology in general, but particularly American mythology. I mean, we have a mythology and it really governs our history, although we don't understand it. And there are two mythologies in America. There's the mythology of the Western hero, Shane. I used to teach Shane in high school. Shane, if you haven't, it was a movie, it was a book. I had the book and I used to teach it, I used to use it in one of my textbooks in high school. But it really caught my imagination. And then the movie with Alan Ladd. And it's just the basic Western myth. It's just like plain yogurt, no flavors, And the Western myth is that it's a free-range place. The West was a free range where individuals were free from the civilization and the intellectualism and the elite of the East, you see. And so you went west and you proved yourself. You carved out with your bare hands a ranch or something, or you were a fur trapper, or but you were an individual. You were a free individual, and the gun was your tool, of won the West, the gun that won the West. So there's this idea of the individual, the free individual, the original man, nature man, the original man, and that the Eastern man, the civilized man, the city folks, the pansy, these were not real men and women, these the Western were real. And then you had in a town, in Shane, you had a little town, and it was in a civil war, a conflict between the ranchers who had free range and let their cows run, and the farmers who had crops or sheep, so they put up fences. So you had this conflict between, and the farmers brought in families. So you had to have schools, and you had to have a mayor, and you had to have the post office, and all these civilization, And so civilization was coming to the West and was beginning to spread its fences and its regulations, you see. And the ranchers and the farmers were having a war. So Shane came in, and he was a reluctant gunslinger. He didn't want to have to get his gun out of the suitcase, but he had to protect the son of, there was a little boy, the son of a farmer, that took him in, and they bonded like father and son. And so the ranchers were the bad guys, and the farmers were the good guys. So Shane came in and shot the bad guys, solved the Civil War, and rode off into the sunset. And the little boy called, "Shane, Shane, come back, Shane." So romantic. Oh, I loved it, So this idea that when civilization, when there's trouble, the Western hero will come in, a Dirty Harry will come in and just shoot the bad guy and doesn't give him his rights. He doesn't deserve rights. Make my day, punk. Pew, you see. Just a strong, no sense action man. No, just do it. So you got this myth. And of course, the Republican Party, I really realized today, thinking about that, this is a romantic party. Now, a romantic is an idealist, gives meaning to life. The romantic wants meaning, personal meaning. And so, this romantic myth of the West gives meaning to the individual. Now there's another myth, you see, that mixes with this, and they both kind of like mix in the Republican Party, I think, and that's the myth of the South. Now the South is also a romantic place. Chivalry, the duel of noble men under the living oak tree with the Spanish moss, you see. The romantic hero. The South went to war with with the idea of chivalry. The whole, the heroic individual. Our individuals are greater than the mass man of the North, you see. So all of the generals were romantic heroes. The South was a romantic place. And so you had these two mythologies, the romance of the South, dying for the lost cause. That's romantic. Dying for the lost cause. That's romantic. And the South is romantic, but it was the romance of a people. So the South, you kind of like had the people who would not be enslaved by the pharaohs from the North. The people who resisted the encroachment of this civilization. These farmers who wanted to put up fences around everything, you see. So both of these mythologies are romantic and individual holding back against the tide of civilization and urbanization and regulations and government. And the government is coming, you see, to fence off, to take away my freedom. So these two myths kind of like converge into the Republican Party. So I got to think, so what is happening here in that, let's take a look at my action. So you have the Republican romantic idea of the heroic individual. Oh, if you're poor, get on and get a job, I did. So there's this, and it's also the romantic hero is an action man. John Wayne acts. Shane acts, right? They're the doer. They come in to fix something. And so Trump kind of like portrayed himself as the Western, although he didn't live in the West, he came out of a tower. But, there is, so it's not really about location, it's about, so he came in kind of like as the fixer. I'm just going to do it. Don't, the heck with the regulations, I'm just going to do it, you see. The doer. So you get this mythology here, pushing the Republicans to be the doer. They position themselves as the savior, the fixer. Because the Democratic Party has always been portrayed as the rabble, as the flip-floppers, as the emasculated men. John Kerry was drinking latte, and so all the Democratic candidates were always Dukakis, the fake, with the helmet, anything, the flip-flopper, the pansy, the indecisive. Well, I can't choose, flip-flopper. We're real men. We choose. We'll pull out the gun and shoot you. You know what I mean? Indiana Jones. Remember that scene in Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, I think it was, where he was faced with somebody who was doing a sword, and he was doing all of his actions, and Indiana Jones just pulls out the gun and shoots him and walks off, you see. Love it, I love it. So you get these, but what's happening today, so the GOP now finally gets all the power. They got the gun. You see. They got to use it. And what's the situation? You see, well, the situation is ambiguous. And the government and the fault line of the GOP is that they have two, I've been talking about double binds. Well, this is just a great double bind. Because the double bind of the GOP is that they have to obey two commandments that are opposite both at the same time, and they can't do it. What are the two commandments of the GOP? Well, one of them is that the government is the evil. The GOP has been running on that since Reagan, if not before, but primarily with Reagan. If the government calls to come, the worst thing in the world is for the government to come and help you. So this very idea of the free Western man, the rancher, roaming free, and the government comes to fence you in with regulations, take away your freedom, make guns illegal, can't even take the gun into town, can't even take the gun into the tavern. You got to give the sheriff your gun. You know, you can't take away my gun. You see, so this whole idea that the government is going to take away your gun, the government's going to take away your freedom, is a Western idea. So you got to get rid of. So you got to shoot the government. Okay, so that's one commandment. Okay, and that's a very strong commandment. And half the party with the Tea Parties were elected to shoot the government because the government's going to take away your freedom and fence in the West, so you can't let your cows run free. So, but the opposite commandment is, so government is bad. But then the opposite commandment is that, the irony of it is that government is good. So if you want to get rid of the government, you have to have government power to do it. So power is good. Government power is good. But government power is bad. So how can government power is bad, but you have to be in the government and you have to have power in order to kill your own power. So, and with healthcare, the problem is that in order to make it work, you need government power. It just, the car won't run without the carburetor or the pistons or whatever part you want to use, you see. So government has to be part of healthcare, but government is bad, so you got to get rid of government. So that's their double bind. Less government is good, more government is good. So half of them vote for more, or half vote for less, so you can't pass anything. Now this double bind is creating tremendous tension. Because you can't be the Western hero. You can't come out and pull your gun and shoot him. You can't act. It's like John Wayne go, blah, 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 blah. Shane can't pull his gun, he's afraid. John Wayne is afraid to act. He's wishy-washy. That can't happen. That can't be. So, this tension, this frustration, builds and builds and builds till finally it just explodes into a crazy act. Now they're so happy, they're so relieved because they finally pulled a gun and shot. And really don't care who they shot, as long as they pulled a gun and shot. The main thing is to not lose face. The main thing is to break through this wow, and pull the gun and shoot something. I don't care what you do, just shoot something. So when you have this double bind, and I've been talking about this a lot, and this is when you have it in your own mind, in your own situation, because this is not just about government, it's about you and me in our everyday life, like going to Walmart, or in our fights and fits and fights with friends and marriages and whatever. When you have a double bind, there's only two ways to go. Towards violence and division, more division, you just continue the fight, or a creative answer that brings unity. So instead of bringing unity when they pulled their gun and shot, they're just creating more division. So it was not a creative solution. But and I titled this little talk called "The Shame of Shame." The shame, the shame of Shane would be when Shane, the Western hero, could not pull his gun and shoot. He has to shoot because he would lose face. So this also brings into me the myth of, getting back to Romanticism, was Don Quixote. Now Don Quixote was a classic about, it was like the last of the age of chivalry, the last of the Middle Ages, the last of the heroic knight. That's another, you know, the heroic knight is another mythology, which kind of like morphed into the heroic Western knight, you see. But it's all about the heroic individual. So Don Quixote was a heroic, the last of the knights, you see. And the classic image was that he saw a dragon on the hill, and he got on his horse and he lowered his lance and he ran to kill the dragon, but it was a windmill. So again, the government is like the dragon, and the knight is getting on his horse and lowering his lance, and he's charging to kill the dragon, and it turned out to be his own government. A windmill. And a windmill generates power for useful, you know, it's useful, it's power put to use. So instead of skillfully putting the government's power to use, the romantic hero wants to shoot the government. And you can't have both. You can't put the government's power to use and kill the government at the same time. So these two commandments are canceling out each other. And it really does open up the Democrats in the future if they can come up with a creative solution that brings unity. If they can come up with a government or an ideal that brings unity rather than division, they've got a good chance, because this health care, whatever happens to it, I'm just going to go to Congress and they'll either throw it in the trash can or change it so that the GOP, so the Congress can't vote. See, either way, it's going to go back and forth like a ping pong ball. So they're going to pass it to Congress, and Congress is either going to trash it or they're going to modify it and then send it back to the House, and then the House will have to either trash it or modify it, or whatever, you know. In other words, it's still got some life left into it, or it may just go in the trash can and leave Shane unable to pull his gun and shoot the bad guy. But the mythology of America is very you know, is we can see it in everything. The romantic. There's a little bit of romanticism in all of us, but a romantic is an idealist. Romantic is quickened blood. It wants to have meaning. It wants to save somebody. It wants to be a hero. It wants to have ideals. So Walter Mitty is a good example. You know, the always imagining myself to be a heroic individual, brave, challenging, fighting for the lost cause. All of this is all about the individual, and the Republican Party has always been about the romantic, the heroic individual. And the Democrats have always been more pragmatic mechanics. You know, they're interested in making in government. Government is their heroic individual. The government is the individual, is the hero for the Democrats. For the Republicans, the individual is the hero. So both of them have this romanticism, but one is for the heroic government, that the best ideal was FDR, the government came to save the people. And Reagan is the best personification of the romantic hero who comes, the romantic individual who comes, the man of action. And these are two two understandings of history that go back, say, to Napoleon and before. There's always been this debate, in the West particularly, of what makes history. Is it that, does a heroic individual like Napoleon make history, or is it conditions? Or when conditions are right, does it just create a Napoleon and he is just a manifestation of a particular set of conditions? So conditions changes history? This is kind of like Marx. Conditions create history. And the other view is that no, the individual changes history. So the Romantics always romanticize the heroic individuals, Napoleon, the Southern generals. The individual creates history. And the other side says, well, conditions create history. So if you change conditions, you change history. So, if somebody's poor, is it because as an individual they are poor and they didn't do right? Get a job. I did. Or the other side says, well, conditions creates the poverty. Change conditions and that person will get a job. There's no individual responsibility there. He's shaped by conditions. And the other side says, well, yes, you are. The individual is responsible. Well, could it be that both are right? But we choose one side or the other. You see, but they're both right, but they're contradictory commandments. So these contradictory commandments are, basically in this situation, conditions create you, or you create you. Now which is it? If you choose conditions create you, you're wrong. If you choose you create you, you're wrong, you see. Because both need the other side. Conditions do create me. I am a creation of conditions. But at the same time, I'm creating myself. So if conditions create me or you, then you're determined by conditions. Then you're not free. But that doesn't sit right. I am free. I can create conditions. I can change myself. I can create a new world. But then conditions. So both of them are contradictory, yet they both make up the whole picture. So this is the Gordian knot. The two opposing commandments, both of which are mutually dependent, you see. And that is, I didn't bring my pen, that is the picture of the yin yang. The two, black and white, the two opposites trying to become the whole. So this is our own. Each of us has to solve this puzzle. This cannot be solved by the intellectuals or the philosophy or the religion or anything. This has to be solved, this puzzle of whether I'm free or not free, whether conditions create me or I create me, is the Zen koan of our own awakening. This is the perennial puzzle of our own consciousness that has to be out of which we awaken. Am I free or am I not free? Or am I both, free and not free? How can that be? So that's something we'll keep on kicking down. But I hope this kind of gives you an idea, gives me an idea as I've been looking at this morning of what are the undercurrents of our history and why is it so absurd today? Why is it so insane? It helps me to understand the mythic streams that are colliding like two rivers. And when two rivers come together, it gets kind of muddy sometimes. So anyway, thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.